What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking about where do bass go during the fall and the best baits to catch them. Fall, it truly is one of the best times to be out on the water bass fishing. You know, the fall is it's a transition time, right? These fish are moving from their summer haunts, their deep summer areas, and they're moving with the bait. The fall, if I could break it down into one thing, it's all about the bait. If you find the bait, you will find the bass. But depending on the different types of fisheries there are, the different types of fisheries that you might be fishing, sometimes that movement or that trek that these fish take following these shad are a little bit different. So we're gonna cover that today because it's really easy to lose the fish, right? As they move from that summer pattern in the grass up shallow, or maybe they're out offshore, out deep on main lake points. When you start getting those overnight lows down into the 60s and the 50s, you know, we've talked about it for a long time. It's a flip to the switch and those bass are on the move because the bait fish are on the move. It doesn't matter what type of bait fish you have, whether it's threadfin shad or gizzard shad or blueback herring or whatever, silver sides, whatever type of bait fish, baby bluegill, those fish are on the move. Typically, they're heading to the creek channels, working their way towards to the backs of coves. So these fish are gonna be all about movement, all about migration with these bait balls because they need to feed up for wintertime. Now, as the surface temps drop, you know, we're talking about, I don't know what the water temp is today. I don't have my trolling motor down in the water, but basically we're talking about water temps between 80 degrees down to like the low 60s, right? So as we go through fall, we have the days are getting shorter, we have the water temps dropping, and we have most importantly, the overnight lows for our air temps dropping, and that really cools down the water temps and it gets these fish moving. It gets the bait fish, like I said, heading to the back, chasing plankton, and then you have the bass kind of moving with them to feed up. But it's all about those water temps, and as these fish transition, you have to stay in front of them because they're gonna be moving. You know, fall fishing is, you gotta be mobile, you gotta stay mobile, you gotta keep moving, throwing reaction baits. You know, don't get stuck fishing the same dock or fishing the same stump or the same laydown that you've been fishing all through summer. These fish are gonna be transitioning, whether they're coming from out deep or they're leaving that main lake point, stopping on that secondary point, working to the next secondary point as they move to the backs of these little bays, little cuts where they can really corral these bait fish. But understand that the fall is all about moving, staying mobile, and fishing fast. Now let's talk briefly about the different types of fisheries. Those of you guys have followed the channel for a long time understand that there's, you know, a big difference between like a highland reservoir fishery and let's say a natural lake, or a lowland reservoir and a river system. So briefly, let's talk a highland reservoir. Understanding a highland reservoir, typically it's a dammed up river system. So the dams are real narrow, but they're really, really tall. And with the highland reservoir, you typically get steeper banks, right? Real abrupt breaks, real sharp contour lines. You get longer bluff walls. You get real long river arms with main lake points separating them, and then lots of secondary points as you work your way up that river or towards the back. And you have a lot of little cuts and little flats. Now a lowland reservoir, typically with a highland reservoir, you're gonna have colder or clearer water. Typically it's deeper, and so you have clearer water because of the real steep contour lines, and you have just deeper, clear, colder water. Lowland reservoirs, the opposite. Instead of having a real short dam that's really tall, you have a really wide dam that's really short. Basically, got some guys celebrating back here. Basically, in my mind, they dammed up like some lowlands or some pasture area, or, you know, something that's just a little bit lower than the surrounding area. They build that big dam. Sometimes it might be multiple dams, really wide, and then it's, you know, they fill that lowland reservoir up. Typically, you have a lot more flats. You don't have as abrupt contour lines per se. You don't have a lot of bluff walls, but you might have a creek channel or a river system coming into it. And if you go up that river, you'll find some of that stuff. But for the most part, there's a lot less, you know, real abrupt breaks, sharp contour lines. It's more kind of like humps and saddles throughout the main body. As you work your way back, hopefully you can find some steeper areas, secondary points, working your way to the backs of these bays, which is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the best ways to catch them once you figure out where these fish are along that fall. I don't really want to say fall transition because we're in the middle of fall, right? It's already happened, but in my eyes, there's different phases along that fall fishing with different water temps and where these fish, we're going to talk about that here shortly, where these fish are and where they're ending up or where they're going to. Lowland reservoir, so we talked about that. A river system, basically a river system, you're dealing with current. Now in river systems, the fish act differently because you have the main river channel, you have current, right? You know, here on the Tennessee River, lots of main river current, but we also have big giant backwaters, some of them as big as some of the lowland reservoirs or highland reservoirs that you guys fish. I mean, some of these backwaters are massive. They're their own lakes, but they also have little tributaries and creeks going into them. So there's creek channels and stuff, but understanding that the river fish with the current, they always have that flowing water, you know, unless the dam kind of stops pumping or whatever, but that's a completely different video, different topic. But for the most part, those fish are used to that current. They're looking to get out of the current seams, so they're gonna sit in the eddies and the current breaks, but understand that you're fishing a different type of fishery when current is involved. And then last but not least, natural lakes and ponds. Briefly, like I said, a natural lake is typically a fishery that doesn't have a very large man-made dam, if any dam at all. So there's not a lot of water fluctuation, completely decided upon by the amount of rainfall, the amount of water going out, water coming in. So you don't have those real drastic water level variations or fluctuations that we find a lot in the lowland and the highland reservoirs. You know, even here in this river system, you can see we're already 4 or 5 feet down. You know, they draw it down for winter pool, Lake Chickamauga, the whole Tennessee River above us. They draw it down just in case there's storms that bring that water level up, and they can run a lot of water through those dams and just move a lot of water. But highland reservoirs, sometimes they're down, you know, 50, 80, 100 feet. And sometimes, you know, they do the opposite in spring. When you get the snow melts, you get those storms, that fish, that water level just fluctuates up and the fish just rush the bank. It's really fascinating the amount of water fluctuation that you have in some of these reservoirs. But the natural lakes aren't like that. You know, you might be down 3 foot or 4 foot for the year, or maybe last 5 years, right? And then you get a really good system that comes through and fills your lake up, and now you're good for a few years. But there's not a lot of fluctuation. There's also not a lot of features. It's typically a featureless body of water. You know, you're not going to have those bluff walls with those long rock points and stuff that the river has eroded away and created in like a highland reservoir per se. But when you do find that offshore rock or that offshore sunken boat or whatever, that key piece of cover, whatever you find, those fish are going to be on it. But again, a lot less features. And I mean, I think of Clear Lake off the top of my head. I mean, what an amazing fishery. Just voted the #1 fishery in the country. Matt and I were blessed to live there. I lived there for about 10 years. And I mean, it's an amazing fishery, but a natural lake, right? Not a lot of water fluctuation. And then a pond. Like I said, kind of add those ponds into the natural lake. Yeah, they are man-made, some of them. Some of them are farm ponds where they're just kind of holes in the pasture, but all that to say, I fish those or treat those kind of the same, right? Kind of featureless. Yeah, there might be some laydowns. There might be some riprap on a man-made dam. But for the most part, you're fishing grass lines and you're fishing laydowns and you're fishing, just little pockets in the grass. So now that we understand the different types of fisheries, let's talk about where these fish go in the different types of fisheries, because that's the important stuff, right? That's the good stuff. So let's start off by talking about the highland reservoirs. I got all my baits laid out over here, just kind of thinking. So highland reservoirs, like I talked about before, typically you have your main body, your main lake body, and then you have one or two or three large river arms. I'm thinking like Lake Shasta or Table Rock, or some of those bigger Bull Shoals. Some of those bigger fisheries just have a ton of fingers, a ton of river arms, a lot of stuff to fish. But just know that these fish are trying to feed up, so they're literally following this bait, and we know that the bait's going to be going to the back. As we talk about water temps, dropping from the, let's just say like, I don't even want to say phase 1 or step 1, but just like 80 degrees to 70 degrees, these fish are getting active, right? They're starting to move back. Maybe they're open water over these balls of bait. As the bait moves back, they might stop on like a secondary point. If there's wood on that secondary point, they're gonna hold on that key cover on that key area where they can ambush from. And then later on, as those water temps drop, those fish are gonna get schooled up even more, and they're gonna continue to work their way to the back. So, 80s, down to your low 70s. So low 80s down to low 70s. These fish are basically checking out of summer and starting to think about chasing the bait fish all fall long. Now you get into like the low 70s to, let's say, like the mid 60s. That's where, like I said, the secondary points, the creek channels, this time of the year, whether you're fishing a river system or a highland reservoir or a lowland reservoir, this time of the year, creek channels are like highways. If you have a meandering or a wandering creek channel back to a cutout or a bay, I mean, that is awesome. These fish are gonna be staging. Sometimes they'll be suspended in that creek channel. We'll talk about baits here shortly. But they'll be suspended there. Sometimes you'll see them in the back blowing up on shad on the shoreline. But a lot of times they will be pushing their way back, making their way back. As that water temp drops, those fish get more and more active because they're feeding up for winter. Now, once you get down to like the mid 60s and mid to low 60s, that's where we're talking about working all our way to the back. That's where I really like throwing a lipless crank, or you might have some grass still there. Most of the grass has died off, but you might have still have some isolated grass patches, and those fish are going to pull to that. If you're on a fishery where you've been fishing an enormous flat, maybe you're on a lowland reservoir or a big backwater on a river system, as those water temps drop, you'll notice that grass starts dying back, and those fish they're gonna vacate out of it, right? So you might have already found yourself in that scenario, but if you can still find lively grass this time of the year, I mean, it could be loaded. You might have, in the summer, you might have had to fish a mile or two of just grass flats, but now with that grass dying back, now it might be only a couple hundred yards, and you can visibly see, the bait fish flickering in it. You can see some blow-ups. You can see life in that grass as long as that grass is lively, and those fish are gonna congregate in that stuff. So that stuff's great. A lot of times I find it in the backs of the cuts this time of the year. So we talked about water temps. Any type of, as we work our way to the back, keep your eyes open, your mind open for looking for steep breaks near that back, right? Just like where the fish stage in the spring, in that pre-spawn, where they come up deep and they kind of stage right before it pops up to that spawning flat. Same type of deal right now. They're going to be in that creek channel, in those creek arms, and whether they're down glued on bottom or they're suspended chasing bait balls, eventually they're gonna pop up and be in the very back. And that's a great time to, like I said, throw a lipless, a topwater, a fluke, a chatterbait. We're gonna talk about baits here at the end of this video, but understand that's kind of where these fish are going. Now, all that stuff I just talked about really applies to the lowland reservoirs as well. Again, you're not gonna have as many river arms and stuff like that, but you will have creek channels, and you will have contour lines that these fish are going to use like highways. But understand, once you get to like the mid 60s to low 60s, you know, these fish are in the back and they're just grenading bait fish. So that is, I wish I had my trolling motor down. That is the key this time of the year, to find those fish schooled up, piled up in the back, and you can have so much fun catching them basically however you want, throwing the kitchen sink at them. But again, these fish are active, they're around those balls of bait, and they're gonna be there for several weeks. All right, so that's kind of the highland and lowland reservoirs. Again, lowland reservoirs, a lot less contours. You will have some humps and some saddles, but start working your way back. Start working, if I were you, I would start at like the biggest bay closest to the dam. Typically the dam has deep water. They're gonna work along that into the back of that bay closest to the dam. Maybe fish that secondary point that separates, that comes out off of that point. Maybe there's two, but you guys kind of get the picture. You know, start there and then work your way back. Again, we're working quickly. We're not sitting there throwing a shaky head. If we do find a stump that has some fish on it, yeah, you could probably throw a shaky head or a jig, but understand that these fish are aggressive and you want to keep moving, because the end goal, at least for me, the end goal is to find that wad of fish piled up just destroying bait, because when they're destroying bait, they are stupid and they're very, very easy to catch. Like I said, fall fishing is so much fun, especially when you find yourself in that scenario. So river systems, like I said before, you know, river systems are interesting. The fish act a little bit differently because there is always that current, right? There's always moving water. Now, with that said, as those water temps drop, those fish, those bait fish, are gonna pop out of that main river channel and they're gonna start making their ways along those creek channels. You've already heard it a bunch in this video. Those fish are gonna use that highway as well. It doesn't matter if they're suspended and you're throwing A-rigs or a jerk bait, or like I said, if they start pushing in the back, then you can really get good in a hurry with you know, top waters and chatterbaits and that sort of stuff. We're gonna talk about baits in just a second. But once they get out of that main river, they act a lot like the other fisheries, right? If you can find those big backwaters that have a creek channel going into it, or a drain, or whatever you want to call it, a ditch. A lot of people call them ditches. Those fish are going to sit in that ditch. They're going to feed up. They might be suspended, working fast to the back. Either way, if you start at that mouth, as they work their way out of that main river to that creek mouth or that backwater mouth, the opening where it dumps into the main river, and then start fishing your way back quickly, you will find, eventually you will run into the bait and you will find bass. Now, the best baits that I like to throw for, let's just start, whether it's a natural lake or highland reservoir or river system, whatever it is, now that we're looking for bait, now that we're checking the openings, the creek mouths, right, to the backwaters, these fish are gonna all work the same. So as they move into the mouth and they start working their way back, as that water temp drops, they work their way back and back and back. I'm cranking, I'm speed cranking, I'm throwing A-rigs, I'm throwing underspins, jerk baits. I have some specific baits here, jerk baits, but I'm throwing baits that move quickly, because again, a top water is something that I can throw out to them when they're busting. Just busted right there. When they're busting, a lot of times they'll be pushing, and all of a sudden they'll come up, and you guys have seen it in our videos, right? You're out there fishing open water and all of a sudden, just big old schools of bass just blowing up on bait fish. Again, fall fishing gets me fired up. It's easier, not easier, it's more comfortable to be out, right? Summertime can get really hot. Fall, you have the leaves dropping, you have beautiful days like this. It's like 75 degrees. It's just comfortable. It's easy to be comfortable out on the water in the fall. Granted, there are storms that come in too, but again, that's another video, another topic. But again, I'm throwing moving baits. I can't emphasize that enough. Fish fast, fish mobile, okay? So even though we're in a river system, now we're fishing that creek channel to the back of that slough or that backwater. eventually when I get back there, I'm gonna be able to fish the same way I would like I would a highland reservoir or a lowland reservoir, okay? So hopefully you guys understand the different types of fisheries and kind of the mindset to stay moving and look for the mouths of creeks, look for the openings to backwaters, and then fish your way to the very back using that kind of, you know, check yourself on the secondary points, the next secondary point, and the next standing timber, and the next whatever, right? Just as you work your way back. What's cool about this time of the year is eventually, once we start talking about fall to winter transition, those fish are going to reverse that entire process out. So when you learn it going in, remember those key areas, because a lot of times those fish are going to stop on those key areas on the way out. Let's talk my favorite baits this time of the year, because that is really, really important. So again, I can't emphasize mobility and fishing quickly enough. Also understand, I used this term recently in a fishing video, the wind is your friend. Okay, so this time of the year, if I'm working my way to the back of maybe it's a big backwater and the wind's blowing from east to west, I'm gonna fish that wind blown shoreline first. You know, that plankton gets blown over there, the bait fish go over there, and in turn, the bass go over there. So wind is your friend. A lot of guys don't like fishing in the wind, but when you're fishing fast reaction baits, and you have the chop on the water, it's not slick calm glass, especially in like highland and lowland reservoirs or clear water reservoirs where those fish can see 30 or 40 feet. When that surface is broken up a little bit, they just chew better. The fish are easier to catch. So the wind is your friend. I'm always looking for those wind blown banks and wind blown shorelines, okay? So with that said, as I'm working my way to the back, number one bait I'm throwing is going to be some kind of crankbait, speed cranking. You guys have heard us talk about this for a long time. This is exactly why we designed this crankbait right here. That's the Tactical DD crankbait. Real tight wobble, real good ghosty shad colors. Did I only grab one? Maybe I only grabbed one. I probably have another one over here. Yep, I always have a spare. Mirrored minnow, DD minnow. I can't tell you how many double digits we've caught on that color right there. But as you can see, you know, nice vibration, rattle. But as you can see, chromy, ghosty. Chromy, ghosty. That is really important this time of the year as we're trying to mimic those bait fish. We're moving quickly, but having a little bit of flash along with that real tight wobble. And as you're burn, pause, or you deflect, or you hit grass and you rip it out, pause, dong. As you're moving quickly, you want that bait to be throwing some flash. So those are some, again, I'll link all this stuff down below in the video description, but those are my favorite colors this time of the year. Just with some flash, some vibration, adding that little bit of deflection and a little bit of, so they're blinding you guys with my watch. It's right there in the lens. A little bit of directional changes, right? When you burn, pause, it backs up in their face, they smoke it. Or you burn, you hit something, you pause and it deflects left or deflects right. You can trigger those bites. Again, this time of the year, those fish are active, and a lot of times you can catch multiple fish, cast after cast. But I'm starting in that creek channel, I'm gonna dredge it. I'm gonna fish that creek channel, see if those fish are down, okay? With that said, if I find that those fish are up, doesn't matter if they're a couple feet off the bottom or up middle of the water column, the A-rig. Specifically, either the mini or the micro A-rig that we designed. That's the Tactical Mini right there, or that's the Tactical Micro right there. Okay, that's a really, really small, there's my hand. It's a really, really small profile A-rig, has some blades on it. Adding that flash, adding that vibration. Specifically on here, I have 3/8 ounce tungsten HD guppy head. So they have a 2/0 HD wire hook in there. You know, I've caught striper, 15, 20 pound striper on these hooks right here. But again, I'm fishing fast. I'm chucking down the guts of that, or I'm fishing that mouth of that creek channel, the mouth to that backwater, or I'm working down that creek channel. I'm throwing this and I'm burning it quickly. Burn, add that rod twitch or add that reel twitch. Burn, twitch. Burn, twitch. Adding those reel cadence changes or those rod twitches really makes that bait collapse and expand, and it just mimics a school of bait fish really well. So that is the micro. The mini is a little bit larger. You can get away with like 3.5, 3.8 inch, 4.3 size swim baits on it. The micro, I like to have like 3.5 to 3 inch swim baits, little 2-inch dummies on the top. But again, an A-rig this time of the year with some blades on it, a bladed A-rig, is so much fun to throw. Couple baits for you in the back. We'll talk about those here in just a second. Once you kind of pop up out of, well, let's backtrack a little bit. Say you're fishing a secondary point on a river system in a backwater, and there is a 10-foot grass area, or let's say there's a stump, or you know, something hard, or something where these fish are in or around. You cannot beat, if you're gonna finesse fish, you can't beat like a 1/2 ounce jig with a cross style trailer on there with some arms, some flap to it, something you can flip and pitch along that area that you're trying to fish. If you need to slow down and you really need to pick that area apart slowly, a jig is a must. But as we move our way back, our goal is to get to the back, find those active fish. Heck, they might be out on open water, but they're working their way back with those bait fish. You always have to have some kind of top water tied on, right? Whether it's a full-size top water like that jowler, or a little bit smaller size top water like this Giant Dog X. You know, this is a lot smaller profile. I like to have these both tied on 1-2 punch, something that I can send a long ways and reach out to those fish that are blowing up. And then something that I can make little roll casts and fish around dock pilings as I work my way back, or lay downs, or, you know, even cast to fish that are blowing up. But kind of my 1-2 punch, I have this time of the year, colors I talked about, some kind of chromey color, bait fish color, and then a bone. Bone is another great color this time of the year, especially if you get low light conditions or you get like a cloud cover and stuff. I really like that bone color. But again, the Jowler, the Giant Dog X, I have tied on this time of the year. Just 2 different walking style baits, 2 different sounds, 2 different commotions on the surface. That Jowler has that cupped face and really throws a lot of water, has a real loud knocker. Whereas the Giant Dog X is more of like a subtle top water, and it shines really well high sun days and slick calm days, more finicky fish. That's a really great top water. So as we're working our way back, you know, obviously an underspin is great this time of the year, adding that flash, adding that vibration. So I like to have some kind of underspin. I like to have an exposed hook underspin. Something that a lot of times these fish are chasing, a lot of times they're schooled up. You might be reeling and don't miss it, don't miss it, don't miss it, load up. You know, 3-pounder, 4-pounder, whatever it is. So I like to have that exposed hook. It just helps with getting that hook penetration easier. A lot of times when these fish are just sporadic and crazy, they're eating your bait. Sometimes they eat it coming to you, and you don't feel it until they turn, and having that exposed hook really allows you to get a good hook penetration even with a bad hook set. So some kind of underspin, again, as you're fishing around that cover, laydowns, stumps, grass lines, dock pilings, in the very back, whether you're fishing along the inside of a grass line, that little guy works extremely well as well. And then 2 more for you. A jerkbait this time of the year, whether it's a deep diving jerkbait or a shallow diving jerkbait, having some kind of jerkbait tied on is really important this time of the year. You guys probably saw a video I did recently. I just whacked him on this guy right there. That's the Zoom Verno 95. It's a real shallow running jerkbait, something you can get real erratic with, has that flash boost in there. So when you do pause it, that shimmies in there and those fish eat it. But I love throwing a jerkbait this time of the year. It's just, again, these fish are active and I want to match their activity. I want to match their speed. So I want to rip, 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 pause, rip, 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 pause, rip, 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 and they just go crazy over it. If you have too much grass, say you're fishing a pond, or say you're in the very backs of these cuts and you do have some grass, obviously you can throw your favorite soft plastic jerkbait like an X-Zone. They make a great one. Megabass has a great one. A Zoom Super Fluke is really good. I'll link some of our favorites down below. But having a weedless presentation, a weedless jerkbait is great this time of the year as well. Now, last but not least, now I have two more for you. Once I get around the back, and I'm around grass, it's really hard to beat a chatterbait. This guy right here, that's the Elite Evo by Z-Man. Painted blades. Again, we're going that real flashy, real baitfish color, electric shad color. Got that Z-Man trailer on there with the Elastec. You can catch multiple fish on that guy right there. But being able to throw this thing super shallow, again, this is really important. These fish are gonna go so shallow by the end of it that you can't even get your boat there. You're better off fishing from the bank or from a kayak. You know, I can't tell you how many times that my motor's hitting. I'm jack plated all the way up, got my Raptors down, and I'm just launching my bait as far back as I can, because as soon as it hits the water, they eat it. These fish, sometimes I can't even reach them. So if you throw up there with a bait that gets hung up, now you've kind of messed up the whole area, right? So I like throwing that chatterbait because it is that single hook. When you do stick them on that gaff of a hook, you don't have to really worry about losing them. You can fish this over, through, around, along the edges of the grass. It just works extremely well. And again, having that vibration, that flash is key. And last but not least, some kind of crankbait, whether it's a lipless crank or a super shallow diving square bill. Again, same type of deal with the chatterbait. Being able to throw that lipless crankbait up there, you can bomb these things. I mean, you can throw this thing 50, 60 yards. This is the TN70. Let me get unhooked. But you can see, guys, you can just long ways. Okay, and then again, you can burn it. A lot of times this time of the year, I like to let it fall. I mean, you're fishing super shallow. You're fishing less than 5 feet back there. So it's not like you have to let it fall for a long time. You can get real aggressive with your rips and pauses, but just burning it back to the boat. I've caught a ton of fish doing it. But if you find yourself where it's super shallow and that square bill is just, I mean, and that lipless is just getting, you know, too much grass on it, it's just getting fouled up too much, that's when I will switch gears from the lipless. And I'll go with this guy right here, a little BTC 50, super shallow running square bill, less than 2 foot. Throw this thing up there, burn, 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 pause, get real aggressive with it, get real erratic with it. And when you do get hung up in the grass, you can rip it out like you do a lipless or a trap, and they smoke it. But being able to deflect off of that newly exposed shoreline, right? We got some newly exposed shoreline over here, about 4 or 5 feet of it. Being able to dive down, deflect off that chunk rock is key to getting bites this time of the year. But guys, that is kind of a summary of where fish go this time of the year and how to catch them. Again, fall is a great time to be out on the water. It's comfortable. There's not a lot of boats out. A lot of guys are up in the tree stand or out there chasing antlers around. So it's a great time to be out fishing, and the fish are active. So whether you're on a river system or a highland reservoir or a pond or a lowland reservoir, you know, fish those key areas, find that bait and work your way to the nearest backwater, the nearest little cut, and you will find that those fish are gonna be staged somewhere along that transition. And once you find that bait, you will find the bass, and you can catch a lot of them. Guys, I hope this helps. I hope this gives you some confidence to get out on the water. Again, I'll link all these products down below in the video description so you can click on them and see the HD pictures and read the specifications on everything. Dive depths of that square bill versus, you know, how much is that top water weigh? You can look at all that stuff. But guys, it's a great time to be out on the water, and hopefully this video gives you the confidence to get out there and try it this time of the year. If you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comment section. I will try to get to those as soon as possible. But as always, thank you for the support. Thanks for watching. If you like this video or you learned something from it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.